Everyone thinks they know the greatest rifle ever made. Ask a soldier, a hunter, and a collector the same question, and you'll get 3 different answers and a real fight. But here's the truth. Most rifles flying off shelves today aren't picked for skill. They're picked for trends, movies, and YouTube hype. Today we count down the 10 greatest rifles ever made. Stay until the end. Number 1 still starts arguments in every gun shop in America. Number 10. The Barrett M82. In 1982, a Tennessee photographer named Ronnie Barrett saw a gunboat on a river and got curious about what kind of rifle could fire the same massive round used in heavy machine guns. He had no engineering background and no firearms training. Working in his own shop with a machinist named Don Mitchell, Barrett spent 4 months turning sketches into a working prototype chambered for the .50 BMG cartridge, the same round developed decades earlier for the M2 Browning machine gun. The semi-automatic action absorbed the punishing recoil by letting the barrel itself slide backward against heavy springs, and by 1990 the United States Marine Corps was carrying Barretts into Operation Desert Storm. The rifle went on to record some of the longest confirmed engagements in military history, including a shot past 2,500 yards by a soldier with the 2nd Ranger Battalion in Iraq. But here's the detail most civilian buyers miss. The Barrett was built to disable engines, radar arrays, and parked aircraft, not to be a general-purpose long-range rifle. It weighs close to 30 pounds, ammunition runs several dollars a round, and a buyer chasing extreme range today would get better practical accuracy from a bolt-action rifle, a third of the weight chambered in something like 6.5 Creedmoor. Barrett charged $5,895 for the first commercial run back in 1990, and a new one today runs even higher. The Barrett earned its legend fair and square. Hardly anyone buying one today actually needs what made it legendary in the first place. That kind of mismatch between reputation and real-world need shows up again at number 9. Number 9. FN Fall. Belgian designer Dieudonné Save built the Fusil Automatique Léger in the years after World War II, and by 1953 it was in full production at Fabrique Nationale's factory in Herstal. The gas piston rifle earned the nickname the right arm of the free world because more than 90 countries adopted it during the Cold War, and FN built over 2 million of them. There's even a rumor that President Truman and Prime Minister Churchill struck a quiet deal in 1952, where Britain would back NATO's new 7.62mm cartridge in exchange for America adopting the Fall as its standard rifle. NATO took the cartridge. The United States went its own way and built the M14 instead, while the rest of the alliance armed itself with a FAL from the jungles of Vietnam, where Australian troops carried it, to the deserts of the 1982 Falklands War, where both Argentine and British forces fought with different versions of the same rifle. And somehow it gets a little more interesting. Israeli soldiers actually carried more FALs than the famous Uzi during the Six-Day War. And countries from Austria to South Africa to Argentina built licensed versions under their own names, like the Austrian STG-58 and the South African R1. But for a modern buyer browsing a parts kit build today, the FAL is a heavy battle rifle chambered in a costly round, built mostly from decommissioned military surplus parts of wildly varying age and origin, in a market where ammunition and spare components are far harder to source than for almost anything else on this list. Respect the history. Just know what you're actually buying before you build one. Number 8. The Lee Enfield. Britain adopted the Lee Enfield in 1895, and by the early 1900s the short magazine version, known as the SMLE, was standard issue across the empire, where rival nations like Germany were fielding 5-round Mausers. The Lee Enfield carried 10 rounds and used a smooth, cock-on closing bolt that let a trained soldier fire faster than almost any other bolt-action rifle in the world. British musketry instructors trained for what they called the Mad Minute, and the official record still stands from 1914, when Sergeant Instructor Alfred Snoxall put 38 rounds into a target at 300 yards in 60 seconds. At the Battle of Mons that same year, German troops reportedly believed they were facing machine gun fire. It was just a line of well-trained riflemen with Lee Enfields. The rifle stayed in frontline service from the Boer War all the way through Korea, was converted into the No. 4 Mark I sniper variant during the Second World War, and variants are still carried by some forces and irregular fighters in parts of South Asia and the Middle East today. But 130 years of age catches up with any rifle. Surplus Enfields vary enormously from bore to bore. The two-piece wooden stock can loosen with decades of use, and what made it a brilliant battle rifle in 1914 doesn't translate into modern precision rifle accuracy. It's a phenomenal piece of history. It's not what you want if you're after a serious modern hunting setup. If you thought legacy versus practicality was the theme so far, wait until you see number 7. Number 7. The Winchester Model 1894. John Moses Browning patented this rifle in January of 1894, and it became the first sporting rifle ever built to handle smokeless powder. A year later, Winchester introduced the .30-30 cartridge specifically for it, and the pairing became so iconic that .30-30 is still shorthand for deer rifle in hunting camps across America. Over 7 million Model 1894s have been sold. President Theodore Roosevelt carried one at his home in Sagamore Hill, and Winchester even presented milestone rifles to sitting presidents, the millionth to Calvin Coolidge in 1927 and the 2 millionth to Dwight Eisenhower in 1953. The lever gun became Hollywood's go-to prop for nearly every Western ever filmed, regardless of whether the time period actually matched. But the same tubular magazine that made it fast and handy also forced it to use flat or round-nosed bullets for safety, since a pointed bullet resting against the primer ahead of it in the tube could set off a chain reaction discharge. That design choice capped the rifle's long-range ballistic performance for over a century. Modern ammunition like polymer-tipped rounds has closed some of that gap, but a buyer expecting 300-yard accuracy out of a rifle engineered for fast, close shots in thick eastern woods is buying the wrong tool for open country hunting. Number 6. The Winchester Model 70. Winchester introduced the Model 70 in 1936 as an improvement on its earlier Model 54, borrowing Mauser's controlled round feed system and claw extractor, and pairing it with a 3-position safety and a trigger good enough that writers like Jack O'Connor built their entire hunting careers around it, particularly with the .270 Winchester cartridge. It earned the nickname the Rifleman's Rifle, a title nobody hands out lightly. Then in 1964, rising labor costs pushed Winchester to cheapen the design, dropping the controlled feed for a push feed action and swapping cut checkering for a stamp pattern. Hunters revolted. To this day, a genuine pre-64 Model 70 commands thousands of dollars more than later versions, simply because of what got taken away. Winchester eventually listened, bringing controlled feed back in 1992 with the classic line, and the rifle is now built by F.N. Herstal in South Carolina with tighter tolerances than the originals ever had. Marine snipers carried Model 70s in Vietnam chambered in .30-6, and the FBI's hostage rescue team relied on them for years before moving to newer platforms. Here's what trips up modern buyers. Roughly 90% of surviving pre-64 rifles have been altered in some way, rebarreled, redrilled for scopes, or refinished, which means a lot of people are paying a premium for nostalgia on a rifle that's no longer the rifle they think they're buying. Number 5. The Remington 700. Remington engineer Mike Walker introduced the Model 700 in 1962, building on the earlier 721 and 722 designs, and marketed it with the claim of 3 rings of steel supporting the cartridge head. The bet paid off. More than 5 million have been sold, making it the best-selling bolt-action rifle in history, and it became the foundation for both the Marine Corps M40 and the Army's M24 sniper systems. Two rifles built on the same basic action, but tuned for different missions and different cartridges. It's shown up in more than 70 films, from The Deer Hunter to American Sniper, and Remington has offered it in over 50 different calibers, and more than 300 configurations since its debut. But the rifle carries a less flattering footnote that a lot of buyers never hear about. After years of lawsuits over accidental discharges, Remington faced a massive class action settlement covering over 7.5 million rifles equipped with the original Walker trigger. And the push feed extractor that helps make the 700 so accurate is also considered, by hunters who pursue dangerous game, less foolproof under pressure than a true controlled feed claw extractor. The accuracy reputation is well earned. Buyers chasing the world's strongest action marketing line should still know exactly which generation and which trigger they're actually getting. That contrast between marketing and mechanics runs even deeper at number 4. Number 4. The Mauser 98. Paul Mauser's design was adopted by the German Imperial Army in 1898 as the Gewehr 98, and it's hard to overstate how much it changed rifle design going forward. Its claw extractor gripped a cartridge the instant it left the magazine and held it under control all the way through firing and ejection. A system called controlled round feed that virtually guaranteed the rifle would function no matter how roughly it was handled. Twin locking lugs gave the action exceptional strength, and a 3-position safety let soldiers carry it loaded and ready without risking an accidental discharge. The design carried Germany through both world wars as the Karabiner 98K, remaining the standard infantry rifle of the Wehrmacht, even as semi-automatic designs began appearing elsewhere. And when the United States built the M1903 Springfield, it copied the Mauser action so closely that the Army ended up paying royalties to Mauserwerk after losing a patent lawsuit. The Winchester Model 70 you just heard about borrowed the same blueprint. So did countless rifles still being built today. But a 100-plus-year-old surplus Mauser is a gamble. Metallurgy, headspace, and bore condition vary enormously between examples. And a sporterized rifle with an unknown service history isn't something most buyers should trust with full power loads. If you want what made the Mauser great, a modern rifle like a CZ550 or a Ruger Hawkeye gives you the same controlled feed reliability with manufacturing you can actually verify. Number 3. The M1 Garand. John Cantius Garand spent over a decade at Springfield Armory developing a semi-automatic rifle that could replace the bolt-action Springfield, and in 1936 the Army adopted his design as the M1. It became the first standard-issue semi-automatic rifle fielded by any major army, using a gas-operated system and an 8-round clip that loaded directly into the receiver. In January of 1945, General George Patton wrote to the Army's Chief of Ordnance and called it, in his words, the greatest battle implement ever devised. Combined production from Springfield Armory and Winchester topped 4 million rifles by the end of World War II, each one costing the government about $26 to manufacture. And the distinctive metallic ping of an ejecting clip became one of the most recognizable sounds to come out of that war. There's actually a popular myth that enemy soldiers learned to listen for that ping as a signal to attack. But a post-war survey of more than 300 Korean War veterans found most of them considered the sound a helpful reminder to reload rather than a liability. And somehow it gets even more impressive. The rifle nearly doubled American infantry firepower over the bolt-action rifles still carried by most other nations at the time. But the same clip system that put the M1 a full generation ahead of every bolt-action rifle in 1936 also means it can't be topped off mid-magazine the way a detachable box magazine can. The rifle weighs over 9.5 pounds unloaded, and surplus .30-06 ammunition has gotten both scarcer and pricier. It's a magnificent piece of American history, not a practical choice for most people's everyday hunting rifle today. If you're finding this history genuinely interesting, hit subscribe, because we cover the engineering and real stories behind firearms every week. Now let's get into the rifle most Americans actually own, and the one most people misunderstand. Number 2. The AR-15. Eugene Stoner developed the AR-15 at Armalite in the late 1950s, scaling down his earlier AR-10 design to fire a smaller, lighter cartridge. Armalite sold the rights to Colt in 1959 for $75,000, and within a few years the Air Force adopted it, followed by the Army, which designated its version the M16. Vietnam exposed a serious flaw early on, but the cause wasn't Stoner's design. The Army had switched to a different gunpowder that fouled the action far more than the powder Stoner originally tested with, and after a congressional investigation in 1967 and the addition of chrome-lined chambers and proper cleaning kits, the malfunction crisis largely disappeared. After the federal assault weapons ban expired in 2004, civilian AR-15 manufacturing exploded, and today an estimated 20 million or more sit in civilian hands across the country, with roughly 1 out of every 5 new rifles sold in America being some version of this platform. Here's the detail most first-time buyers overlook. Every AR-15 on the rack looks similar, but barrel steel quality, gas system length, and bolt carrier group machining vary enormously between a budget tier rifle and a true mil-spec build, and the cheapest option in the case is rarely the one that holds up over a decade of real use. The same modularity that made the platform a military success, the ability to swap a barrel, stock, or trigger group without sending the whole rifle back to a factory, is also exactly why quality is so inconsistent across brands today. Which brings us to number 1. Number 1. The AK-47. Mikhail Kalashnikov's design was officially accepted by the Soviet Army in 1949. Built around a long-stroke gas piston and deliberately loose internal tolerances that let it keep cycling through mud, sand, and salt water that would jam almost any other rifle on this list. It fires at roughly 600 rounds per minute on full automatic, uses fewer moving parts than most of its rivals, and can reportedly be field stripped by a soldier wearing gloves in the dark. Estimates put total production across the entire Kalashnikov family near 100 million firearms, making it the most produced rifle design in human history. It's been carried by regular armies, guerrilla movements, and irregular fighters on nearly every continent, and it's the only firearm that appears on a national flag Mozambique's to this day. But the AK's legendary reliability gets applied to every AK pattern rifle sold, when the truth is quality swings wildly between a genuine milled receiver original, a stamped AKM pattern rifle, and a budget import built to looser tolerances than the originals.